Welcome to the channel for another exciting video. Most people who watch our videos are not subscribed, so I kindly ask you to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new content. Your like is essential for YouTube to understand that this content is relevant, so please like, share, and leave your comment. Now, let's get to the story. Ethan walked into the luxury store in Chicago with a racing heart, a mix of anxiety and excitement. The soft light from the crystal lamps reflected on the polished marble floors, creating an atmosphere that exuded sophistication. He was casually dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans, drastically contrasting with the refined environment surrounding him. The customers around him were adorned in famous designer brands, showcasing bags and accessories that seemed to have been handpicked. Ethan felt like a fish out of water, an intruder in a world that seemed to have no space for him. As he walked through the space, trying to absorb the atmosphere, Ethan approached one of the salespeople, a man in a sharp suit with a haughty gaze. With a shy smile, Ethan said, "Hello, I'm just browsing. Could you help me with some information about the bracelets you have?" The salesperson looked at him with disdain, shook his head slowly, and returned to assisting an elegantly dressed woman next to him. Ethan stood frozen, the hope of being attended to dissipating quickly. "Sorry, sir, but I'm busy at the moment," the salesperson replied, without even looking at Ethan. The words felt like a blow, a painful reminder that, in that place, he was not welcome. He stepped away, trying to ignore the muffled laughter of others in the store, who watched him with curious and contemptuous looks. The feeling of insecurity grew within him, but Ethan struggled to maintain his composure. "Maybe I should just leave," he murmured to himself as he walked to a more distant section of the store. He sat down on a leather bench, feeling the pressure of other customers, gazes on his back. However, his determination was not easily broken, and he decided he would not leave without giving the service one more chance. He stood up and approached another salesperson, who was animatedly chatting with a group of customers. "Hi, could I ask about these bracelets?" Ethan tried to be polite, but the salesperson shot him a quick, disdainful look. "We're busy. Maybe you can come back later," she said without interrupting the conversation. Once again, he felt insignificant, as if his presence did not matter. Discouragement began to take hold of him, and he decided it was time to leave. As he headed for the exit, a burly security guard with a stern look approached him. "Are you trying to shop or just wander around? This is not a store for everyone," the security guard said in an authoritative voice. Ethan, surprised and confused, tried to explain. "I was just looking. I'm not causing any trouble." But the security guard did not listen. "Get out right now. We don't want customers who don't behave according to the rules," he replied, gesturing toward the door. Ethan felt the heat rise to his face, embarrassment mixed with anger. "But I didn't do anything wrong," he protested, but there was no arguing with the firmness of the security guard. Those words echoed in his mind as he crossed the threshold, feeling the gaze of everyone present on his back. The murmurs and giggles of the customers followed him, creating a sense of humiliation that accompanied him as he walked the streets of Chicago, lost in his thoughts and reflections on the brutality of the prejudice he had just faced. Ethan was in his loft, a minimalist space with large windows offering a stunning view of the city of Chicago. The morning light filtered through the glass, but the atmosphere inside the apartment was dense, laden with the frustration and disappointment of the previous day. He flopped down on the sofa, still holding the leather bracelet his grandmother had given him years ago. The accessory was simple, but for Ethan, it carried a deep meaning. It was a symbol of the life lessons his grandmother had taught him, the importance of respect, dignity, and treating everyone fairly. "How could I let this happen?" he murmured to himself, looking at the bracelet. He closed his eyes, remembering his grandmother's words. "Respect is the foundation of everything, my dear. Without respect, there is no connection." Those words echoed in his mind, especially after the humiliation he had suffered in the store. He felt a mix of anger and sadness as he recalled the disdainful looks and the indifference of the salespeople. Ethan was not just a customer, he was a human being, and he deserved to be treated as such. Rising, he began to pace the room, his mind buzzing with ideas. What if I could turn this experience into something positive, he thought, stopping in front of the window. He watched the people passing below, each with their stories, their challenges. If I want to be heard, I need to do something grand. With a new purpose, Ethan headed to his desk, where documents and business plans were scattered. That morning, he decided he would not let himself be defeated. Instead, he would use the indignation he felt as fuel for real change. He began to jot down ideas in a notebook, planning his return to the store. "I need to show them that respect cannot be bought with clothes or social status, he said to himself, determined. "I need to show that appearance does not define a person's worth." After several hours of planning and reflection, Ethan realized he needed an external transformation to accompany the internal change he was seeking. He walked to the closet and selected an elegant suit, something he had never imagined wearing before. Looking at himself in the mirror, he adjusted his tie and smiled. "This is more than just clothing. It's armor for the battle I'm about to face." He felt confident and ready to claim the respect he deserved. When the day finally arrived, he dressed carefully. Every detail mattered. "You are ready for this, Ethan," he whispered to himself as he left the house. The energy of the city pulsed around him, and he felt he was about to rewrite his story. Arriving at the store, Ethan took a deep breath, trying to control his anxiety. He noticed that some glances turned toward him, but this time, he didn't feel the weight of disdain. Instead, he felt empowered. "Let's see how they react to a new Ethan," he thought as he entered the store with determined steps. He was ready to present himself not just as a customer, but as someone who was about to make history. Ethan entered the luxury store with determination, the soft sound of footsteps on marble flooring echoing around him. He had carefully chosen an elegant suit that fit him perfectly, and a silk tie that reflected his new status. The shine of the lights reflected off his polished shoes, but his heart raced, a mix of anxiety and expectation. He knew he had a mission to fulfill. As he crossed the entrance, an air of discomfort hung over the staff. Confused glances crossed, and discreet whispers began to echo among the salespeople. Some exchanged looks, and one of them, a woman with brown hair, murmured, "Is he a new customer?" The anticipation hung in the air, but Ethan did not let it discourage him. He walked directly to the counter where one of the salespeople who had ignored him the day before was organizing some clothing items. "Good morning," Ethan began, his voice firm yet calm. "I would like to speak with the store manager." The salesperson, with a hesitant expression, looked up, recognizing Ethan. The disdain he had shown the day before had now turned into confusion. "I'm sorry, but you need to schedule a meeting. I can't help without an appointment," he replied, trying to maintain a professional demeanor. Ethan smiled slightly, aware of his role. "Actually, I'm the new owner of the store. I bought the business overnight." An uncomfortable silence settled in. The salesperson blinked a few times, or unable to process the information. "What did you say?" He looked almost incredulous, as if Ethan had made a bad joke. "That's right. I am the new owner," Ethan repeated, his confidence growing with each word. "And I would like to talk to all of you about how we can change this store." The salesperson, clearly distressed, looked around, seeking support from his colleagues. One of the managers, who had been observing the scene from a distance, approached, a perplexed expression on his face. "You can't be serious," he said, disbelief evident in his voice. "You, the new owner?" "Yes," Ethan replied, maintaining his composure. "If you let me, I would like to explain how this happened." At that moment, some other employees began to gather, drawn by the conversation. The atmosphere of tension was palpable, mixed with curiosity. Ethan took a deep breath, realizing he was about to reveal his true identity and the reason for his presence. He positioned himself, looking each of them in the eye. "Yesterday, I was treated as if I were nothing, simply for not being dressed according to what you consider acceptable. I want you to reflect on how this store presents itself to the public. Exclusivity should not mean exclusion." The woman with brown hair, who had whispered earlier, now seemed interested. "But the store has always been this way. We have standards to uphold, standards that exclude people who have as much value as any customer who walks in here," Ethan replied firmly. "And that's why I'm here. I want all of us to look at our attitudes and change the way we treat people." The looks that had once been distrustful began to soften. Ethan saw a glimmer of understanding in some employees' eyes. The tension in the air began to dissipate slowly. He continued, "I want you to know that this store is a reflection of who we are, and I want us all to be recognized for our respect and dignity, not for our clothing or appearance." The salesperson who had previously ignored Ethan now looked embarrassed, his face flushed, I'm sorry, I didn't realize, he said, with a sincerity that touched Ethan. I just followed what I thought was the right way. Ethan nodded, understanding that everyone was there to learn. And that's why I'm here now. So we can learn together and make the store a place where everyone feels welcome. Let's work together to change this. In that moment, a sense of unity began to form. The initial disbelief was replaced by a genuine desire for transformation. Ethan smiled, realizing that despite the challenges, there was a real opportunity for change. He was determined to make the store a space where respect and inclusion were the cornerstones of the brand's new identity. Ethan was determined to transform the culture of the store he now owned. He knew that to do this, he needed to address the issue of prejudice and exclusion directly and honestly. On a sunny day, he called all the employees for a meeting in the main hall of the store. The environment, once marked by glamour and ostentation, now had an air of expectation and nervousness. Ethan wanted everyone to be heard. As he entered the hall, he noticed the skeptical looks from the salespeople. Some still seemed surprised and embarrassed, while others exchanged murmurs. Ethan took a deep breath and addressed them with a smile. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I know this is an unexpected moment, but it's important that we have this conversation. The chairs creaked as the employees sat down, some clearly uncomfortable. Today, I want to talk about something that has deeply affected me and that I believe affects all of us, he began, his voice steady. Recently, I went through an experience that made me reflect on how we treat people, especially those who don't fit our ideal customer mold. A young woman named Clara, who had worked at the store a few years ago, hesitantly raised her hand. You're talking about what happened to you here in the store, right? Ethan nodded in agreement. Exactly. When I first walked in here, I was just an ordinary customer, dressed casually, and I was ignored. This experience was not only painful for me, but also an illustration of a larger problem that exists in our society. The murmurs grew louder, and Ethan sensed that the room was ready to listen. You must be wondering why I'm here, and why I'm talking about this. The truth is that I want this store to be a place where everyone feels welcome, regardless of their appearance or social status. We have the opportunity to change this together. One of the older employees, Roberto, stood up and, with a choked voice, said, I didn't know you went through that. I admit that sometimes I let my biases influence my service. It wasn't right, and I regret it. Ethan looked at Roberto, who was visibly emotional. Thank you for sharing that, Roberto. It's important that we can be honest about our mistakes. What we need now is a mutual commitment to change. I'm here to help create an environment where we can learn and grow together. Clara, encouraged by Roberto's honesty, added, I have also treated customers poorly without realizing it. It's never easy to admit that, but I want to change. I want to be part of the solution. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear, Ethan replied, his heart warmed by the employees' openness. Let's work together to create a training program focused on inclusion, respect, and empathy. We need to understand that every customer who walks through these doors has a story, and everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Silence filled the room as the employees reflected on Ethan's words. He paused before continuing. I believe that if we can acknowledge our shortcomings and commit to change, we can not only transform our store, but also positively impact the community around us. A sense of hope began to settle in, and the employees started looking at one another, some with tears in their eyes. The meeting was not just a conversation, it was a turning point. Ethan knew they had taken the first step toward a more respectful and inclusive future in the store. And let's work together to build a space where everyone feels welcomed. And more importantly, where each of us can be the best version of ourselves, he concluded, realizing that true change started right there, in that moment. Ethan, now in charge of the store, was determined to change not only the establishment's image, but also the culture that permeated its halls. He knew that change started from within, and that it was crucial to instill a new mindset among the employees. The next day, he called a meeting with all the staff, an event that promised to be both challenging and revealing. The store's walls, once adorned with luxury products, now seemed to reverberate with the anxiety of the employees gathering around the oval table. Ethan took center stage, and his gaze firm and resolute. He took a deep breath, remembering the bracelet his grandmother had given him. This memory was his talisman, his motivation. Good morning, everyone, he began, his voice resonating with authority. Today, we will talk about something I consider fundamental: respect. The murmurs among the employees intensified, and some expressions showed discomfort. One of the saleswomen, Laura, hesitantly raised her hand. "Ethan, with all due respect, why should we listen to you now? Weren't you the one who was kicked out of the store?" Her question was met with puzzled looks, but Ethan remained unfazed. "Yes, I was kicked out. But that doesn't diminish what I'm trying to do here. In fact, it motivated me to take action. What happened to me is a reflection of a bigger problem we all face. Social exclusion is not just about class. It's about being human. We all have the power to change this," he replied, his voice laden with sincerity. The room fell silent, and Ethan continued. "I want each of you to reflect on your experiences, on how we treat our customers and each other. What can we do to ensure that everyone feels welcome here?" He paused, observing the faces around him. "We need a fresh start, a commitment to inclusion." A young salesman, Ricardo, who had seemed somewhat reluctant until now, finally spoke up. "But how can we change this? We're so used to serving just one type of customer." His statement was interrupted by a stern look from Laura, but Ethan raised his hand, asking for calm. "I understand your concerns. Change doesn't happen overnight. But we can start with training that addresses inclusion and respect. Let's learn how to engage with people from different backgrounds and how to make everyone feel valued when they walk through these doors," Ethan proposed, his determination evident. "And what if customers don't accept this new approach?" Laura asked, still skeptical. "This is part of the process. If we show that we are willing to change, many customers will notice and join us." "Respect must be a two-way street," Ethan replied, firm in his conviction. "I want all of you to participate in the development of this training. Your voices are essential." The meeting continued, and Ethan began to explain the ideas he had in mind. He talked about creating workshops where employees could share experiences and discuss biases they encountered in both their personal and professional lives. "Empathy is key. We need to learn to see the world through others' eyes," he said, emphasizing the importance of mutual understanding. As the meeting progressed, employees began to open up. Stories of discrimination and bias emerged, and soon the atmosphere in the room changed. The embarrassment that had hung in the air gave way to a feeling of solidarity. The conversation flowed, and Ethan realized he had begun to break down the barriers that had previously separated them. At the end of the meeting, some employees approached Ethan. "I really hadn't thought about this before. I want to be part of this change," Laura said with a sincere smile. Ricardo also spoke up. "Count me in. I'm ready to learn and help." Ethan smiled, feeling that the seed of change had been planted. "Together, we can make our store a place where everyone feels welcome. Let's show Chicago that respect and inclusion are the new pillars of our business." The determination in his voice was contagious, and he knew that, just as his grandmother had taught him, the value of respect was beginning to blossom there among those willing to listen and learn. Ethan's story quickly spread across social media like wildfire. In the hours following the announcement of his acquisition of the store, hashtags like #RespectEthan and #Inclusion in Fashion began to gain traction, and posts multiplied by the minute. Ethan could hardly believe what was happening. He was sitting in his loft, surrounded by a pile of messages and notifications that kept coming in on his phone. The screen flashed with alerts of new followers, comments, and shares. "It's unbelievable," Ethan murmured, running his hand through his hair. "I never imagined this would resonate so much." He laughed, recalling the moment he decided to dress smartly and confront the prejudices he had faced. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was a producer from a popular television show. "Ethan, hello, this is Carla from Morning with Style. Our team was captivated by your story, and we would like to invite you for a live interview tomorrow. We can discuss your experience and your new vision for the store," she said enthusiastically. "Sure, I would love to," Ethan replied, feeling a bit nervous but also excited. "I think it's a great opportunity to talk about the importance of respect and inclusion." "Perfect. We will be waiting for you at 10 a.m. See you tomorrow." Carla ended the call. Ethan had no idea how many people were eager to hear his story. The next morning, he arrived at the studio, where cameras were already in place. The atmosphere was vibrant, with bright lights and a production team running around to make last-minute adjustments. When he was called, his heart raced, but he took a deep breath and prepared to share his message. "Ethan, welcome to the show," said the host, a charismatic woman named Louisa. "Your story has touched many hearts. How did you feel being ignored in that luxury store?" "It was devastating," Ethan began, his voice steady. "But at the same time, it gave me the motivation I needed to do something different. It's not just about me. It's about everyone who has ever felt excluded or belittled." Louisa nodded, intrigued. "And you really bought the store overnight? How was that decision?" "Yes. It was an impulsive but necessary decision. I knew I needed to change the culture of that place. A store that should be a welcoming space was becoming a symbol of exclusion. I couldn't just stand by," Ethan explained, his gaze determined. The interview continued, and Ethan shared his ideas about inclusion and respect, emphasizing the importance of treating everyone with dignity, regardless of their appearance or social class. When the recording ended, Louisa smiled and said, "Ethan, you are an inspiration. I'm sure your message will resonate with many who are watching us today." The reaction to the interview was instantaneous. Once again, Ethan saw his phone vibrating incessantly. Messages of support and gratitude flooded his inbox. He felt fulfilled, realizing that he was indeed making a difference. In the following days, Ethan received invitations for other shows, talks, and even corporate events. He participated in roundtables and discussions, always bringing to light his experience and the importance of respect in the workplace. On one such occasion, he was invited to speak at a leadership conference, where he had the chance to meet renowned influencers and business people. During one of these talks, a participant raised their hand and asked, "Ethan, how do you deal with the resistance from people who do not believe in the need for this change?" "I believe that change starts with empathy," Ethan replied, observing the audience attentively. "If we can help people understand that we all face invisible battles, maybe we can build a space where respect is the norm, not the exception." These words echoed throughout the room, and Ethan realized that his journey was just beginning. He turned to the audience, determined to continue his mission of promoting respect and inclusion wherever he could. The memory of his grandmother, who had always taught him about the importance of treating others with dignity, was his constant motivation. The lessons she left not only shaped his worldview but were now spreading to others, creating a movement Ethan could never have imagined. Ethan was excited and nervous at the same time. The gala night he organized at the store was more than a social event. It was a celebration of his journey and an opportunity to show the world that change was possible. He had invited a list of celebrities, friends, and, of course, those who had once disrespected him. The store, which had once been a symbol of exclusivity, was now becoming a welcoming space where everyone was invited. The lights shone brightly, reflecting off the windows filled with haute couture clothing. A red carpet stretched across the entrance, and soft music echoed throughout the space, creating a festive atmosphere. As the guests began to arrive, Ethan was at the door, greeting each one of them with a genuine smile. He wore a tailored suit that accentuated his confidence. Among the guests were some of the former salespeople who had ignored him the first time they saw him. Now they wandered around the space, wearing expressions of curiosity and a hint of embarrassment. Ethan noticed Clara's nervous gaze, one of the saleswomen who had been especially harsh. The last time they saw each other, she was more concerned with the appearance of the customers than with providing good service. Now, she looked lost, observing everything around her. "Hi, Clara. I'm glad you came," Ethan said, approaching her. I didn't know if I should come." "I'm sorry for what happened," she replied, her eyes downcast. "I appreciate that. We're all here to learn and grow, right?" Ethan smiled, trying to break the tension between them. Clara nodded but still seemed hesitant. As the night went on, the store filled with laughter and lively conversations. Ethan made a point of interacting with all the guests, sharing stories and experiences. He watched as the atmosphere changed, and with it, the sense of camaraderie intensified. When it was time to go on stage, Ethan felt his heart race. He positioned himself in front of the microphone, looking at the audience filled with familiar and unfamiliar faces. A respectful silence filled the room. "Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to have each of you here," he began, his voice firm and clear. "Today, we're not just celebrating the new phase of this store, but also a new way of looking at people. What happened to me, and what many of you witnessed, was a clear example of what prejudice can do. But more importantly, it was an opportunity. An opportunity to learn and change. Clara's eyes sparkled with understanding, while other guests listened intently. Ethan continued, "When I was kicked out, I was nothing more than someone dressed casually. But that doesn't define my worth, just as the worth of each of you should not be defined by the clothes you wear or the way you look. We should all be treated with dignity." Hearing his words, the former salespeople seemed increasingly embarrassed but also touched. Ethan remembered his conversations with each of them during the training sessions he had implemented. "Today, I want to invite those who ignored me to join me here on stage. Let's show everyone that respect is a choice we can make every day." Clara, along with other hesitant salespeople, finally stood up and walked toward the stage. The audience murmured, reflecting surprise and expectation. When everyone was together, Ethan looked into each of their eyes. "This is our chance to show that we can unite and overcome our mistakes. Forgiveness and empathy are essential for our growth." Applause began to echo throughout the store, and emotion filled the air. Ethan smiled, feeling the positive energy emanating from the audience. He knew that this moment would be a milestone not only in his life, but in the life of the store and everyone involved. It was a reminder that, despite the challenges, respect and empathy could transform any situation. The atmosphere in the store was electrically charged. The bright lights reflected off the glass walls, creating a vibrant environment that contrasted with the palpable tension in the air. Ethan stepped onto the makeshift stage, his gaze fixed on the audience watching him, a mix of curiosity and nervousness. He could see familiar faces, friends, and even those who had once ignored him. The soft music that filled the space was silenced, and a respectful silence took over the room. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility in his words. He approached the microphone and, with a slight smile, began his speech. "Good evening, everyone. I am truly happy to be here with you, in a place that represents not just a business but a symbol of transformation and inclusion." His voice, firm and clear, echoed through the hall. As he spoke, Ethan remembered the day he was expelled from there, the pain and humiliation he felt. But now, he was there in a new position, not just as an owner, but as someone who had an important message to convey. "Today, I want to share a bit of my journey, but more importantly, I want to talk about something we can all improve: respect." He paused, observing the audience's reactions. Some people seemed restless, others reflective, and he knew it was the right moment to touch on a sensitive point. Respect is not just a word. It is an action, a choice we make every day. When I first walked into this store, I was treated as if I had no value. I was invisible. And that, my friends, is something that should not happen to anyone. Murmurs began to arise in the audience, and Ethan noticed that many were starting to feel uncomfortable. He continued, his passion for change pulsing in every word. "The exclusion I experienced reflects a larger problem in our society. When we look at people only by their appearance or what they wear, we are losing the essence of being human. Each of us has a story, and each of those stories deserves to be heard and respected." The employees who had ignored Ethan during his first visit exchanged nervous glances, aware that their actions were being exposed. Ethan, realizing the impact of his words, decided to be even more direct. "I want to invite those who ignored me to come up here and join me. Let's create a space for reconciliation and learning together." An even deeper silence fell over the audience. Hesitant, some salespeople began to stand up. The atmosphere was tense, but also filled with expectation. One of the salespeople, Sarah, who had been particularly cold, finally stepped forward. With a choked voice, she said, "Ethan, I want to apologize. I was wrong to treat you that way. I should never have judged you by your appearance." Ethan smiled, encouraging her to continue. "Thank you, Sarah. That is a big step. Acknowledgement is the first step toward change, and we are all here to learn and grow together." Another salesperson, Carlos, also stood up. "I feel ashamed. What I did was unacceptable. Not just regarding you, but as a reflection of what our society often does to people. I am committed to changing that." Applause began to echo in the room, and Ethan felt a wave of emotion seeing his colleagues' willingness to make amends. He then turned to the audience, his eyes shining with determination. "Today, we are not just celebrating a new era for this store. We are celebrating the opportunity to be better to each other. Respect must be the foundation of everything we do. The audience, moved by Ethan's words and the sincerity of the salespeople, began to applaud, standing up. The energy in the air shifted, and the atmosphere of tension gave way to a feeling of unity and hope. Ethan observed the emotional expressions around him, feeling that this moment would become a milestone not just for him, but for everyone present. Let's build a future where respect and inclusion are the pillars of our community and our business. Together, we can make a difference. The applause intensified, and the night transformed into a symbol of overcoming and learning, where respect finally found its place in the heart of the store. The atmosphere in the store was charged with emotion and reflection after the gala night that Ethan had organized. The guests, many of them former customers who had never set foot there before, now mingled with the employees in a climate of celebration and learning. However, a respectful silence took over the environment when one of the employees, Lucas, approached Ethan with a serious look. Lucas, one of the salespeople who had ignored Ethan during his first visit, was visibly nervous. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of guilt on his shoulders. With a hesitant gesture, he approached the protagonist of the night. Ethan, who was surrounded by compliments and questions, noticed Lucas's expression and, instead of stepping away, nodded, encouraging him to continue. "Sure, Lucas. What do you need?" Lucas looked around, as if he wanted to ensure that no one else was listening, and then said, I want to apologize. I didn't know who you were at the time. I just saw a casually dressed customer and, well, I didn't give you the attention you deserved." He hesitated, bit his lip, and continued, "Actually, I feel ashamed for having treated you that way." Ethan watched him closely, noticing the sincerity in Lucas's eyes. He knew that change didn't happen overnight. But that moment of vulnerability was an important step. "Lucas, I appreciate your honesty. We all make mistakes and sometimes let our perceptions influence our actions. What matters is learning from it." Lucas nodded, relieved not to have found contempt in Ethan's words. "I feel that over the years, I let myself be carried away by a certain elitism. The store was a space where I felt important, and I didn't realize how wrong that was. You taught me today that true value lies in treating everyone with respect, regardless of how they present themselves." Ethan smiled, his expression gentle. "Exactly. Respect should not be a privilege, it should be a standard. And that is how we can build an environment where everyone feels welcome." He paused, looking at the other employees nearby, many of whom were listening to the conversation intently. Change begins with each of us. Lucas, now more confident, gestured with his hands as if trying to gather the right words. "I would like to be part of that change. I want to help promote a more inclusive environment here in the store. I believe we can do better." Ethan, touched by Lucas's determination, said, "That is exactly what we need. If we all work together, we can transform this store into a space where every customer feels heard and valued. Let's start this journey together." With a new sparkle in his eyes, Lucas moved closer, almost as if he were having a moment of revelation. "I want you to know that even though I have failed in the past, I am committed to this new vision, and I will do my best to ensure that this never happens again." Ethan reached out and shook Lucas's hand, a simple gesture but filled with meaning. "I appreciate your honesty, Lucas. Forgiveness is essential for true change. Let's move forward together." That small moment, away from the lights and applause of the gala, was a milestone in the store's transformation process. Ethan knew that the journey was just beginning, but Lucas's willingness to apologize and change was a renewed hope. The store, now a symbol of inclusion and respect, would become a reflection of the lessons Ethan learned from his grandmother, and, more importantly, it would be a space where everyone who crossed the threshold would be treated with dignity, regardless of their appearance or background. Ethan stood before an attentive audience in the store that he had transformed into a symbol of inclusion and respect. The celebratory atmosphere still lingered in the air after the gala night. He took a deep breath, feeling the positive energy radiating from every corner of the space. Looking at the faces surrounding him, he remembered the motivation that had brought him to this moment. His grandmother. With a serene smile, he began to speak. "Today is a very special day for me. Not only because we are celebrating the success of this store, but because we are here to make a difference in the lives of many young people who, like I once did, feel that they have no place in the world. He paused, observing the reaction of those present, who were completely engaged by his words. I want to announce the creation of a social initiative that will support underprivileged youth by offering learning and development opportunities. This idea is a tribute to my grandmother, who always taught me the importance of helping others. The crowd applauded warmly, and Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. He continued, I believe that we all have a duty to cultivate an environment of respect and empathy, not only in our businesses, but in the communities we live in. It's time to give back. As he spoke, some of the employees who had previously ignored him exchanged knowing glances and nods, recognizing the importance of the message Ethan was conveying. One of them, Clara, approached the microphone, visibly emotional. Ethan, you have taught us so much. I didn't realize it at the time, but what I did was very wrong. I am willing to help with this initiative. I want to be part of this change. That's wonderful, Clara. Each of you can make a difference. Together, we will create a program that offers not only professional training but also emotional support for these young people. Ethan replied, his eyes shining. After the speech, the employees gathered in small groups discussing how they could contribute to the new initiative. The atmosphere was filled with enthusiasm. Ethan, pleased with the excitement he had generated, decided it was time to get to know his team better and the ideas each one had. While conversing with the group, a familiar face caught his attention. It was Ricardo, the security guard who had kicked him out of the store. Ethan's heart raced upon seeing the man, recalling the discomfort he had felt that fateful day. Ricardo hesitated but finally approached Ethan. Hi, Ethan. Can I talk to you for a moment? His voice was tense, and Ethan noticed the vulnerability in the ex-colleague's eyes. Of course, Ricardo. What would you like to say? Ethan invited him to speak, maintaining a friendly tone. I want to apologize. That day, I didn't know who you were, and I let my prejudice guide me. My behavior was completely wrong. I was just trying to fit in, and I ended up making you feel even more out of place, Ricardo confessed, shame evident on his face. Ethan nodded, understanding the internal struggle that everyone faces. Ricardo, I appreciate your honesty. Forgiveness is essential for true change, and I forgive you. We are all learning to be better every day. What matters is that now you are part of this new phase. Ricardo smiled, relieved. Thank you, Ethan. I really want to be part of this initiative you are creating. I believe I can help, and at the same time learn to be a better person. Great, then let's work together. Your experience can be valuable in understanding what these young people face. Ethan replied, feeling the strength of empathy establish itself between them. The night continued with renewed energy. The store, which had once been a symbol of exclusion, was now becoming a landmark of inclusion and learning in Chicago. The social initiative would come to life, and with it, Ethan's dream of creating a space where everyone could be heard and respected. While watching his team mobilizing, Ethan realized that respect and empathy were truly the greatest assets they could cultivate. He smiled, satisfied with what was to come. So, what did you think of this story? Your opinion is essential for us to improve our content. Write what you thought in the comments and remember to subscribe and like this video. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the next video.